wait a second. That's not me. That's Jonathan Hunt, I think. Hi, everybody. I'm Juliette Huddy, as a matter of fact. Not Jonathan Hunt. He's not here today. But happy Friday the 13th. I hope it's safe and happy, and I hope nothing bad happens. Some good stuff is happening here in the studio. Let's meet our panelists for today. I'm going to start on the far end with Jim Pinkerton, who is the contributing editor and writer of the American Conservative Magazine, Fox News contributor. At James Pinkerton is your handle on Twitter.
James P. Pinkerton.
James P. Oh, excuse me, I don't have my glasses on. Yes, pardon me. Apparently when you turn 32, you need glasses. Just kidding. And also, John Hlinko is joining us today. President and CEO, Hlinko Consulting, and your Twitter handle is?
J. Hlinko.
Now, are you guys active on your Twitter accounts? Or do you have somebody doing it for you?
Like I do it myself.
You don't have your
people? A couple a day, probably.
Oh, that's good. Okay, good.
I just have it randomly generate tweets.
All right.
No, I do my own tweet.
Some people are very into the tweeting thing. It's like I get into it for about 3 days, and then I stop doing it for 2 weeks. I'm sorry about that. I probably shouldn't admit that on this show, should I? Anyway, all right, let's start with voter ID. We're going to start with a story. Some Texas lawyers found a clever way to try and prove that, this law requiring voters to show a photo ID when they go up to the voting booths is right on target. They looked at a Harvard study that found that President George W. Bush is actually one of those people, one of 1.5 Texas citizens whose name is on the list as failing to meet the eligibility requirements of this law. So he's not the only Texas Politico, too. 2 members of the state legislature are also on the list. The Obama administration had been using this Harvard study as an example of why the law will make it more difficult for minorities to vote. So which side is going to win the fight, do you think, Mr. Hlinko?
Well, I think this is clearly designed to try and disenfranchise more Democrats. The whole idea of voter fraud and this, where are the waves of fraud that we keep hearing about? I'd love to see actual evidence. It's very clear what this is trying to do. These voter ID laws, it's true, they are the modern-day poll tax. This is an effort to disenfranchise groups disproportionately who are going to vote Democratic. Now, it's clever that it's guised in the form of preventing voter fraud, but it still is what it is.
All right, let's listen to what the Department of Justice has to say about this. This is Civil Rights Division Chief Tom Perez yesterday on the issue. Let's listen to what he has to say.
We concluded that they had not met their burden of establishing the absence of discriminatory purpose and the absence of discriminatory intent. That's what the trial is about. The burden is on the state to establish the absence of discriminatory purpose and the absence of discriminatory intent. And we are presenting our case. The state is presenting theirs. The interveners are presenting theirs. And the court will soon speak on this issue.
So, Jim, what do you think is going to happen here? And first of all, who kind of won on this one? I mean, the Obama administration gets to use the Harvard study, but then the Harvard study gets sort of twisted around.
Yeah, Harvard, there's a well-known bastion of fairness and ideological balance.
Close your ears, John.
Look, John asked for evidence. Well, here's 285 pages of evidence. It's a book called Who's Counting? How Fraudsters and Bureaucrats Put Your Vote at Risk by John Fund, frequent visitor to this channel, and Hans von Spakowski, who's a former commissioner of the Federal Election Commission. And they've got 285 pages of documentation, Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, of course my hometown of Chicago, you name it, all the vote fraud you could possibly want, right there documented. And the question is, what do we do about it?
See, John, you come here and you get gifts.
I love gifts.
Maybe not gifts that you're actually going to use.
Well, what I'd like to know is, if we're going to talk about disenfranchising 758,000 people in Pennsylvania, 1 million and change in Texas, I mean, I would like to see, where are the 1 million-plus cases of voter fraud in Texas? Where are the 758,000 cases of voter fraud in Pennsylvania? It's clear that this is something that was suddenly discovered because it's a very clever way to disproportionately impact the poor, minorities, folks who are less likely to have voter IDs, or less likely to have state-issued IDs. It's very clear what this is designed to do. It's designed to shave a point or two off the Democratic totals, and in some cases that's going to be determinative.
I mean, I know Eric Shawn has done stories and investigations on voter fraud. Is it that unique, that unusual, this sort of phenomenon, or lack of phenomenon?
758,000 cases of voter fraud, and again, my home state of Illinois, then that's because you're not looking. Because I'm sure there are. I know there are. Look, the issue. Sure, over years, absolutely.
Oh, over years.
The issue here is, look, 758,000 every decade adds up. The issue here is, how hard is it to say that you have to have an ID card to do anything? You can't get into a building anymore. You couldn't go visit Eric Holder at the Justice Department if you didn't have an ID card. You can't rent a car. You can't get on an airplane. You can't do much of anything. I mean, if you don't have any kind of ID card, there's serious question, and this is what these guys are talking about in their book, whether you exist or not in this country.
Yeah, but when you look at folks who are poor, who are a lot less likely to own a car or to go on an airplane, they are statistically less likely to
cash
have.
a check, you get a Social Security card, get a, anything. Again, there's nothing that you can do in this world in terms of a public function that doesn't require an ID.
The argument is that going and getting an ID
I live in
is
Roswell, Virginia. I
expensive.
live in the same precinct 25 years. I go to vote. They say, "Hi, Mr. Pinkerton," and then they say, "Oh, by the way, we need to see your ID card." They know exactly. I'm 6'9". I'm kind of visible from afar, and they still, because Arlington is run in a clean way, insist that they show. And not only have to show a driver's license, then I got to read it. So tell me your address. That seems kind of fair to me.
But John, your point is that it is expensive to go. To some, it's quite expensive. It doesn't fit into their budget to be able to go and get an ID card. But we're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of dollars here.
Oh, it sounds very, very simple. And the reality is, for most people, it's going to be simple. But if you're poor, if you're working long hours, I mean, have you gone to the DMV?
All the days in the world and time and
look, if you're a legal citizen of this country, and even if you're not, you can go to the Democratic Party and say, "I want to vote," and they'll help you.
But it's easier if you're wealthy. It's easier if you.
It's the easiest thing of all is when a party machine says we're going to give you a free. I mean, look, both parties will give you a bus ride. They'll have somebody come and pick you up at your house. They'll hand you the absentee ballot. They'll do anything they possibly can for if you exist. And again, as I said, and document here, even if you don't exist.
Here's what Brian says. Hold on one second, guys. I want to read these things because I'm always really bad about doing this, and it's the web. Brian says you need a photo ID to rent a car. Now it's moving. So many people are commenting. To buy a beer, etc. Most state DMVs issue a non-driver's license photo ID for free or nominal cost. Can't the Dems be satisfied with dead extra votes without trying to use illegals? I mean, the fact is, then the argument is, well, how do they get to the DMV? It's expensive, and they have to. Well,
it takes time. It all sounds very easy, I think, if you're in a part of society that has the luxury of having some time off or has adequate daycare, or has all kinds of things that make these things easy, it sounds easier. Although I wonder, though, I mean, I'd like to... If you've actually gone and got a driver's license, that's a royal pain in the you-know-what.
It's total hell, let's be honest.
The Service Employees International Union, the Democratic Party, they'll tell you they want you to vote for obvious reasons. They will spoon feed it to you. They'll take you to the DMV. I guarantee there's not anybody who wants to vote says, but I don't have an ID card. The Chicago political machine will say, fine.
Well, we'll escort you to the vote.
They bust them over, both sides bust their people over to events and political rallies and all that business. So I'm sure they'd be happy to vote and bust them over to the DMV.
But this is a solution looking for a problem. This is a solution that, I mean, for 200 change years, I'm happy to read it. But you would think that if we're going to disenfranchise 758,000 Pennsylvanians, that we'd have a heck of a lot more than, I don't know, 1 or 2 cases, if that.
Everybody's pretty much saying the same thing. You have to have an ID card to have a job, to get a book from the library. Mike says, see the cases against an organization called Acorn. You may have heard of it. Any further questions?
Yeah, and again, what I'd like to see is where's the evidence of mass fraud? Like, what I want to know is, did the Republican Party really wake up one morning and say, my God, there is so much fraud, we are so outraged to find fraud? Or was it, wink, wink, we're going to find fraud?
I'll give you an example when it was, 1986, in a special Indiana 2, the 2nd Congressional District of Indiana, the Republican had on election day, the Republicans had by like 30 votes. Tony Coelho, Leon Panetta, and somebody else who escapes my name formed a little committee inside the Congress, and lo and behold, 3 months later, they found another 50 votes, and the Democrat had won. Those are the kind of click moments for Republicans.
All right, let's move on. Let's table this. You guys can fight at one of the dinners that you have. What did Hannity called it?
Oh, Hannah, Mark Hannah called it a
spinner dinner. Yeah. Some of the guys, political guys and gals get together for dinners, and they have all these even more. What was the supper pack?
Supper pack.
I like that one too. All righty. You ever notice when you hear Mitt Romney talk fondly about President Bush? He's usually talking about Bush 41, not 43, not his contemporary. There was a campaign fundraiser held by Dick Cheney over the last few days. Romney touted Cheney as a great American leader, gave him a nice speech, but as far as Cheney's boss, no mention. The Bush-Cheney administration, I think this is fairly obvious, seen by many as divisive, polarizing, but obviously when the guy's raising $4 million for you at fundraisers, as Cheney has, you should say something nice. Now, I guess your thoughts on the dinner, your thoughts on the Romney-Cheney camaraderie from Baja?
If Bush wants to raise $4 million, then he can get his mention too. Look, the polls show that even now, 3 years and whatever it is into the Obama presidency, that by a 2-to-1 margin, people think that the Bush administration is more to blame for the economy than the Obama administration. 3.5 years.
They're reminded about that every day by President Obama.
They are, but
people know the truth.
It's worked. It's worked. And so, if I were Romney, I would not be dwelling on my Bush legacy. This is why I think the whole Condi Rice thing, for example, the VP thing is a fake.
Oh, you do think it's a fake?
Totally. Yeah.
Explain why.
Because I don't think there's any chance that they'll pick her.
Why?
Because she's pro-choice. She's said many, many times she doesn't want the job. And look, if you don't want a job like that, you're not going to have. It's an 18-hour-a-day job campaigning. If you don't really enjoy it, the voters will, TV cameras will see it on you pretty quickly and say, well, this candidate doesn't really have his or her heart in it. I don't think she's going to. I don't think there's any chance at all.
She says. I mean, she basically echoes what you're saying. She's like, no. I mean, she didn't say definitively, I am not. But it was just saying things. And
people have been known to fib on these things and change their minds.
That's
However, the Bush left office with a 29 or 31 or whatever it was % approval rating. If she gets on the ticket, it litigates every last thing that Bush did for 8 years. But Romney's much better off picking Portman or Rubio or Pawlenty or somebody new and fresh as opposed to digging up all this old stuff.
I will say though that she is a she's African American, and she is a brilliant woman who impresses a lot of those in the conservative circles.
Unless you read all the memoirs written about her, which are pretty negative, say she didn't do a very good job.
Back off, Jim. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, John.
I would agree with Jim. I think that it is very unlikely that she'd get picked. I mean, I was going to say I'd be thrilled if you picked Dick Cheney. If they're like the new BFFs. Let's get Cheney on there, please. But I would agree with Jim. I think I think the approach that Romney is going to take is do no harm. Especially if it's a close race. You don't want to go...
Would a crowd hammer say dull begets dull or something like that?
Yeah, and what America wants right now is not a spicy, crazy kind of fusion meal. They want a dull baked potato because America's got a collective tummy ache, and what Romney can offer them is someone like a Portman or a Pawlenty or someone who is... maybe dull is unfair, but who projects confidence.
Rubio, I would not consider safe. Would you?
Well, he's not as safe as say Portman, but he's very attractive, charismatic.
Okay,
would be a good choice.
Real quick, just very quickly, we talk about safe, dull begets dull, that thing. So Christie, yes or no? Do you think that he would be one?
I think it's highly unlikely.
I think especially lately. I mean, I'm a Christie fan actually. I live in Jersey and I like what he's doing for me. But lately he's been a little bit the acerbic, snarky.
Sometimes
some would say abusive comments or a little much.
As they say in television, there's something called a Q rating, how much they like you. And likability is a subtle thing, but as they say about, friends come and go, enemies accumulate. And if you insult people, the people you compliment forget you, the people you insult remember forever.
Yeah.
I would say Christie, he's very engaging in a way in that he does tell it like it is, but he just came out recently called the drug war a failure, and I think if you're angling for number 2 spot on the GOP ticket, you don't come out as saying we need to not fight the drug war, essentially.
Very quickly, someone who has a clean record and no personal baggage would be a good pick for Mitt. That's from Charles. And Eddie says, I like Condi, Alan West, Marco Rubio, Mitch Daniels. That's the last we're going to talk about on that topic. Would you be interested in doing your bias bash?
I would.
All right. So
I've been too shrinking violet around here lately.
Romney and Bain Capital. The question today, I think we're talking about, is the media eating up what the president's team is feeding?
Right. I mean, I think they clearly are. I think when you look at the Boston Globe and Current TV and all these outlets doing all this, they're clearly scooping the stuff and lapping it up. And meanwhile, the bias is not so much that it's not newsworthy that Romney may or may not have filled out his forms properly. Although John Hinderraker at Powerline Blog has a pretty good reputation of this. However, let's just say that's an interesting topic to discuss. Fair enough. However, whatever happened to the executive privilege on Fast and Furious? Whatever happened to that effort there? I mean, why is somebody died in that one as opposed to all this Bain Capital stuff? why is the media so utterly interested in that? Why are they? So meanwhile, the Obama administration keeps secret what they should be disclosing, the documents on Fast and Furious. Meanwhile, there's abundant evidence that they're disclosing what they should be keeping secret, to it all this stuff that Tom Donilon and other people in the Obama administration are accused of leaking about the Stuxnet virus, against the Iranians, and about the bin Laden, this poor doctor who helped us kill bin Laden, is now in jail for 33 years because we leaked his name, or not his name, but at least the process by this. I mean, the media ought to be calling the Obama administration to account on, look, whether or not Romney did this thing about Bain Capital. Let's talk about the rule of law and the Obama administration, and whether things should be disclosed that are now secret, or whether things that are secret should be disclosed. The media are completely given up on that because they're now just completely into a feeding frenzy on Romney and Bain.
Would you like to respond?
I would love to respond.
React.
I think, look, this whole Bain thing, it just increases the weirdness factor with Romney. The idea that he said, well, look, after February of '99, no involvement whatsoever. And yet he signed several documents thereafter, federal documents, over the next 3 years, and he was listed as the full owner and the CEO. It's very weird. I don't think he did. I mean, I don't know, but I doubt it was in fact criminal. But it's bizarre, and it once again raises the question: who is Mitt Romney? Can you trust him? What is true? What is not? What is going to change 10 minutes later?
I saw LeBolt on one of the shows today on Fox News Channel, which is a fantastic 24-hour cable news channel. You guys should watch it. And talking about this particular topic, talking about Stephanie Cutter, where she should be backing off, the felon comments and all that business. What do you think is going to ultimately happen with this? So this is just yet another thing that's just going to kind of poof and die, or will this become something? Will this have legs? Jim, we'll go to you on this one.
I think Romney better find a way to deal with this. I think he better have a press conference and answer all the questions. I remember Geraldine Ferraro back in 1984, when she was under attack for all these alleged mobster associations. She held a press conference, said, ask anything you want. It was an hour and a half. The story went away after that.
I think Jim is 100% on the money. I mean, they always say, and not to say this is Watergate level, but with Watergate, it wasn't the... in general, it is not the actions, it's the cover-up. The cover-up is the problem. The fact that people assume the worst is going to come out and they don't know what it is, I would completely agree. You should hold a press conference and just let it go as long as it needs to go.
Politics. Why'd you guys decide to get into
Because the beat's working.
Oh, wow. You guys are two of the busiest men in showbiz. Or politics, I should say. Sorry. Okay, we're going to thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to go on to a commercial or a break.